Welcome to the Pickleball Addiction podcast. Today I have James Chaudry on the show. Welcome, James.
Nice to be here, Mark. Thanks for the invite.
So, James, I've been trying to get you on the podcast, since the middle to later last year, I think. Good old, maybe 9 months at least. So I'm really pleased to have you here. So thanks for taking the time today.
Well, thank you for your patience. Apologies for the delay. Very busy life, both on the pickleball court, off the pickleball court, and with a real job as well. So it's been a busy few months. I'm sure we'll get into it in a minute. But excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to talk to you, and that's why I've kind of been persistent about getting you on. So I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation with you. For people that don't know too much about you, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I came into pickleball probably 3 years ago now, and it was more by accident than it was on purpose.
Okay.
I had a tennis career prior to this, and cutting a much longer story short, injured at one of the junior Grand Slams, reassessed what I wanted to do, went to college out in the States, played at Mississippi State University, great collegiate tennis program out there. Still wanted to play professionally. The body ended up saying no, and several surgeries later, having graduated several surgeries later, I had to pack it in. So I moved back to the UK for a couple of years, a little bit of coaching. I developed a tennis club in North London, bunch of little things, but always knew I wanted to make a difference on the other side of the white lines, so to speak. So not on the court, but outside of it. So I moved back to the US. I did an MBA at the University of South Florida and stayed on and did a master's in sport and entertainment management. With that, I started working with professional sports organizations in their strategy and marketing departments, and subsequently partnership sales and sponsorship and all these sorts of pieces. But it was while I was out there, this was 2016 to 2019-ish, pickleball was really starting to grow. Now, I had that typical tennis player, I'm not going to play that, plastic ball, plastic bat, I'm not going to try that. And I was living out in Los Angeles, and it was really growing, and I was playing tennis and another sport somewhat similar to paddle, and just didn't try it. Fast forward into COVID and moving back to the UK and a couple other things, I get introduced to Pickleball England, and to build out strategic plan, understanding that they were filing for national governing body status. And I said, look, this is great, a grassroots sport. I really want to come in and try and make a difference in sport and social exercise and all these sorts of pieces. And got introduced to the sport that way. And I had to obviously try the sport. Right. I need to know more about it. And, I had to eat my words. And I humbled myself very quickly, because after picking up the paddle for the first time, I saw how addictive it was and how much fun it was to play, and understood the value proposition very, very quickly, that anyone can pick up this sport, anyone can play. It's very socially inclusive, and fell in love with it 3 years ago, and here I am today, competing and working on the business side of the sport, and with Pickleball England, but also playing to a fairly high level and still working in the sports industry separate to that.
Wow, competing and winning, of course. But that's amazing. I did not know that it was a professional capacity that you kind of first got introduced to it. So that's really interesting, and that's quite funny, because you may never have picked it up either. And I assume that you're glad you did.
I'm very glad I did. The pressure from some of my friends out in Los Angeles to try this sport was mounting when I left. So I'm sure I would have had to have tried it, because the amount of visits I had to do going back that way. Right. I don't think I'd have got out of it for too much longer. But, I had the perfect introduction into the game. I really got to understand it from a community level. And, I've never looked back.
It'd be really good to talk a little bit about your time in the US. So when I was doing some research for this interview, you haven't done too many interviews. So again, I feel quite privileged, but you did do one for the Mississippi State Athletics back in 2013. when you were a bulldog. So
Yes.
that was a
Yeah.
5-minute interview.
Well,
So tell us a little bit about your time in the US and how that was for you.
yeah, that was obviously during my tennis days, and being a collegiate athlete in the US is something that I'm very proud of, and almost a great community to be a part of, not just from a tennis perspective, but also from a Mississippi State perspective. The US take their sports really, really seriously, and they build infrastructure around it. Sport is a lifestyle, and I'm sure we'll get into that from a pickleball perspective a little bit later. But even tennis in Mississippi, which is not a big sport compared to baseball and American football and some of these others, the pride that they have for their collegiate sports
Yeah,
programs is
yeah,
immense. So we would be out there, and it wasn't uncommon to have 1,000 people at our tennis matches. Which, when you think about university sport over here in the UK, it's
yeah,
definitely not that, and especially not for something like tennis. I was part of almost a great fraternity of athletes that have gone on to do amazing things. While I was at Mississippi State, the starting quarterback for the football team there is now the starting quarterback for the Cowboys. Right?
wow,
We've had Olympic medals in across different disciplines, from track athletes to field and such. We've had many Major League Baseball stars come out of Mississippi State. So you know, it's a great pathway into professional sports, but also it's a great privilege to be playing in front of people that really, really care about their sports and treat it as a lifestyle and part of what they want to grow up and aspire to do and be.
yeah. Yeah, in some respects, college sports is as big as the professional sport, isn't it? Especially college football and things. They get huge crowds.
Absolutely. We had a just shy of 60,000 seater stadium at Mississippi State. Bearing in mind our student population was a smidge under 30,000. It was full every single game, and there would be 20,000 people outside the stadium that couldn't get
Yeah,
tickets to be in, just partying outside. So,
yeah.
like I said, sports is a lifestyle out there, and really, really impressive, and they take it very, very seriously.
I'd I'd love to know a little bit more about your tennis career. I mean, it sounds like it was stunted pretty early if you were in playing junior tennis. I mean, did you go onto the professional tour at all? Do anything like that?
I played in a few ITFs. So I think I got my first ATP point when I was 15, maybe 16 years old. So and was fortunate enough to have won quite a few national championships as a junior growing up. So my career path, or at least my focus, was always to be pro, pro, pro. Had it not been for an injury at the Junior Australian Open in 2009, I think I very much would have been on a path to at least attempting to be a full-time tennis pro. I think that the injury, in a way, was a blessing in disguise, because it makes you realize that you're not invincible. And as
Mm,
many young athletes will tell you, you feel like you can do anything at that point, and you're almost tunnel visioned into being the very top of that sport, the particular sport that you're playing in. So I was fortunate in a way that injury happened and made me have a different perspective on life, and ultimately went to college. But you're right. I maintained an ATP ranking even through college, and not being able to play too many ITF events on the Futures Tour. But I think I probably played 4 or 5 total after graduating college. I had ankle surgery, I had my elbow pinned, and then tore my
oh,
forearm. And this was all before the age of 23. And, one of the reasons for going to university was to have a backup plan,
yeah,
and not to just solely rely on athletics, because you never know when something can happen, an injury can come, or worse. So I wanted to then make sure that I used that education that I had got at Mississippi State, and try to find a balance between the two.
wow. So it's more than just one injury then. I mean, I assumed it was ankles or something because you wear the strapping, but it was more than that. Is that
Yeah,
all through
it's
playing the
been a
sport?
few.
Was that all
It
through playing
was.
tennis? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think tennis doesn't get enough credit for just how physical it is on your body. The movements within tennis are not something that your body naturally wants to do, and the amount of torque that goes through your knees, your ankles, your waist, your shoulders, your elbows is quite intense. So yeah, it's not uncommon to see players that could have had pro careers having to retire early because of injuries. I think that
Yeah.
while many of those top tennis players have done an incredible job with their teams to look after their bodies and all this, there are elements of luck to it as well. My ankle separating was bad luck. The elbow that needed to be pinned back in place was also bad luck. It was just an accidental fall and it snapped in a weird way. These are things that you can't really account for. So there's some luck involved as well. But yeah, it did definitely it took a toll on my body.
Mm.
And thankfully, pickleball was a little easier on it, at least for now.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to like what you're currently doing. So, can you tell us a little bit about your kind of roles, inside and outside of pickleball? Hi, Mark Mars here. I hope you're enjoying the show. This podcast is sponsored in part by the Pickleball Addiction store and newsletter. To support the show, please check out the Pickleball Addiction store at pickleballaddiction.co, where we stock a wide range of paddles, balls, nets, and other accessories. Use coupon code POD10, that's POD10, to get 10% off your first purchase. You can also check out the Pickleball Addiction newsletter at pickleballaddiction.news, where we cover the latest news in pickleball from the UK and around the world. Thanks for your support, and now back to the show.
Yeah, so I sit on the board of directors for Pickleball England, essentially oversee anything to do with sponsorship, commercial revenue, and really try to drive the overall strategy of Pickleball England, for the fact that I work in that space professionally as well, and I see it across many different sports, leagues, teams, federations, globally. So I have an insight into the sports landscape, and I try to use it as much as possible to help Pickleball England. My day job is with a group called Elevate. They're a sports agency based out of the US, founded by probably some of the biggest and most impressive groups within sport. So you've got San Francisco 49ers, Ticketmaster Live Nation, Oakview Group, and Harris Blitzer Sport and Entertainment, who own multiple pro sports franchises out in the States. So, Elevate was formed on a vision of taking the best practices out of many of these organizations and creating an agency that could go and service that across the industry, and bring a whole wealth of knowledge and expertise under one roof and be able to take that to market. I've been there for the best 2.5-ish years. Sometimes it feels like 10 years. Sometimes I feel like we're still a startup with the way that we're growing so quickly. So I work for Elevate day to day, and sit on the board of directors at Pickleball England.
Very nice, very nice. So what would you do day to day in your job at Elevate? What's your role there?
So I'll take you through one of our major projects at the moment, which is Everton Football Club and their new stadium build. So anything to do with partnership infrastructure or sponsorship surrounding the stadium is to do with us. So think of it like trying to piece together a major puzzle and then try and tell a marketing story through it. And what I mean by that is, if you're building a new stadium, there's an awful lot of new tech and innovation that needs to go into that stadium to keep fan experiences modern and to be able to make sure that future-proofing it when new technologies come around. Mm-hmm. So we'll do a lot of research in the market, understand what companies are doing what, and figure out ways of being able to integrate new technologies into that stadium build. And that will be piece one, but then that technology also needs to go through the entire ecosystem of a club. So the men's first team, the women's first team, the academy, the training ground, the community, all of the charities that are associated. So we try and bring it all together, create one major ecosystem, and help integrate a brand in that way. So that's the integration side of it. We'll also be in market and trying to really understand what a brand is, what certain brands are looking for. So maybe they're about to launch a new product and they need mass marketing exposure, or maybe they're going for a rebranding process. So something like naming rights to the stadium could come into the mix. So we try and match up, brands and rights holders to try and make sure that there is a strong two-way partnership.
Okay, sounds good. Pickleball Addiction Stadium. That might be quite good to see. You can do that for me. That'd be good.
I would love to see that come to fruition and put on something like an English Open on the fan plaza there. But yeah.
Well, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I don't know if that would work too well either. So.
Reds and blues, maybe not so much. Although, to be fair, both clubs are very friendly and behind the scenes, and they both do some really, really great work in the community together.
Yeah.
So there's a way of spinning it. If there's a will, there's a way.
Cool. Well, back to pickleball. I really love watching you play. In some ways, the way you play just looks really effortless to me, and your cross-court passing shots are somewhat of a weapon. So, and I heard, Louis the other day on an interview call you the number one singles player in Europe, which is very high praise.
Very kind of him. Singles comes pretty naturally to me because of the tennis background. I'm the first one to admit that. I see the game very well. One of my strengths as a tennis player was to be able to analyze points, whether it be mid-point or be able to take a step back at a change of ends and be able to analyze what's going on the court. So I was always pretty strong tactically on a tennis court. That transitions over into pickleball pretty well. The other side of it is pickleball. It's a little bit of a game of cat and mouse, and it is a game of being able to pick your targets and hit it, especially in singles. And one of my strengths as a tennis player was when I was put under pressure, I loved being able to find a spot and then really go for it. That was where I was most aggressive. And again, it translates pretty well into pickleball. You've got very tight spaces compared to a tennis court. It's all happening very fast, and you have to use your hands and flick around and read the game well. And so naturally, the single side of it comes more easily than, let's say, the double side, which I've had to unlearn a lot of tennis techniques and traits from over time. But from the effortless side of it, I love the fact that people think it's so effortless. It's definitely not. I'm normally very tired at the end of it. I just have a way of making sure that I stay true to why I enjoy the sport, which is having fun. So if I'm out there stressing and putting all that stress through my body, I'm probably not enjoying it anywhere near as much. I enjoy it, so it probably looks a little bit more effortless than it really is, and the physical impact that it's having on my body. But yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, yeah, you've there's quite a few questions there that I was kind of come to actually, and I still will, because there's probably more there. But aside from having a background, in tennis, I was going to ask, do you think your game naturally lends itself to pickleball, and that kind of tactical thing that you kind of mentioned? I think probably really does. Like, I one of the reasons I like pickleball, apart from it being, easy to just pick it up and then, good, then you've got to learn it, is that it is very tactical. And, when you bring the kitchen into play, which isn't in tennis, it's very much like a chess match in some ways. You're trying to push people around, get them out of position, get them off balance, so then you can attack them. Would you say that was more the case than tennis in terms of that tactical? And do you think that's what appeals to you in that kind of tactical element to pickleball?
I think it does. And I think now more than ever as well, with the way that tennis has been going in recent years versus what pickleball brings. What you see in tennis and I was probably in the middle of this major transition as you see some incredible athletes hitting the ball very hard, very accurately, and they're very, very well drilled.
Mm.
But my argument to a lot of them is, they're so good at what they do that they don't really have a second game or a plan B. It either works and they're really good, they
Mm.
outplay their opponent
Mm.
playing game A, or it just doesn't work. And that was never really my style in tennis. One, because I probably wasn't anywhere near as naturally talented or as clean of a ball striker as a lot of them, and probably just a lot of overthinking and whatnot. I would say that pickleball lends itself to being a thinking game, much more so than just being able to hit through people and people with the most
Mm.
talent winning all the time. You really do have to think while you're on the court. You have to have presence of mind. You can't panic. And what I've seen, especially in the pro side of the men's game recently, especially having been in the States a couple of times in the last couple of months, is you're seeing rallies that, although these guys could be hitting the ball at what seems like 1,000 miles an hour through you, they don't, because everyone is so fast with their hands now. It becomes a lot more cat and mouse, especially in doubles.
Mm.
So they're
Mm.
looking for just those little slight openings, those little advantages. Can they put it an inch wider to make you move? Can they get it right at your feet so you'll pop it up? And you end up seeing, 20, 30, 40 shot rallies every single point now. And it's not because of pace. It's all dinking and maneuvering people around
Mm.
and trying to outmaneuver them as a pair. So it is very tactical, and it's a lot of fun to play. And I love that side of the game.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I mean, I think that it seems you're right because I only started 18 months ago playing pickleball, but even in the US, I think, like you just said, having a plan B. I think the only person they ever really talks about as doing some study in the game was Ben Johns and the Johns brothers. They study their opponents, and actually, they often come up to difficulties when they face a new opponent they don't know much about. And actually, then they play them again the next time, and then they figured it out, kind of thing, and figured out the weaknesses and things. And I think that's kind of really interesting. And I think it does seem like it's just like you're saying, the level that it's at now. It does seem even in the US that they are thinking about that a lot more and studying the opponents and coming up with not just plan Bs but specific plans for specific opponents as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that pickleball is going for a crazy evolution right now. There was a mentality that you in doubles take it. There was a mentality that the stronger player always played on the left because it's
Yeah.
forehands through the middle, and it's just not the case anymore. You see people specializing in their sides a little bit more. You see it becoming very, very tactical. If the player in the pair is weaker and they're on the right, then most of the balls are going to the right. So they're having to play more shots regardless of which side they are. It's just changing. It's changing a lot. You're starting to see a lot of lefties, lefty-righty matchups now. So you'll have
Yeah.
a lefty on the right and a righty on the left, so both having their forehands through the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I would say consensus is a lot of people find it a little easier to dink with their backhand side. So when you're thinking about dinking cross court, you've got both backhands on the outside and forehands on the inside, which is where you want to attack through. So I think lefties are having a big impact on the game as well, and I think it's just evolving and changing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what disciplines in pickleball would you say that you found it harder to master? Maybe like unlearning some of that tennis, but just stuff that wasn't so natural for you.
Patience, and still learning that, and I think there's levels to it, right? If we go and we practice and we do a drill where we'll play points, but the majority of it has to be dinking, that's fine because it's in your head. Now, when you get into a live point in a match and you see a little bit of space open, there's always that sort of itch in your brain to go for that one, go for that one.
Yeah.
Well, at certain levels, you can get away with that. and I'd argue that we play in the UK we have a training group of pretty strong people, so we all read each other pretty well, and we manage to shut each other down from just picking the first opportunity to go for it. So we're learning that way. But I'd say it's even more so in the States, because every time you think there's a gap, there isn't a gap. They're leaving that gap deliberately to entice you to hit that spot because they just come across to get it. So there's definitely been some, back to your question, like it's been trying to figure out the best ways of knowing when there really is a gap or when there isn't a gap, and that general patience. The other side of it is one thing that I'm just about starting to figure out is really when you're there up at the net and you've got volleys. The first movement you've always been taught in tennis is to turn the shoulders, keep the racket out in front, but turn the shoulders. And nowadays, you don't have enough time to turn the shoulders and keep the paddle out in front. It's you have to keep the paddle out in front and make sure that your movement's correct and keep moving the paddle towards the ball. So little things like that I had to start unlearning or relearning or picking up. I've said this to a few people actually recently. I was quite fortunate when I was coaching and playing out in the States post college, and I was at a tennis academy in Birmingham, Alabama, and I helped build out an academy program there, and it was used for placing people in lower level colleges with some success at some high level placements as well. But I used to play the kids using a wooden racket to make it a little bit more fair. And some of the skill sets needed to play with a wooden racket, because you can't swing as big, you can't hit it as hard, you have to lean on the ball a little bit more. Actually, I find myself doing some of that in pickleball, and it's really helped. I think I would struggle more if I had never had that experience as well.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. So when you say about turning your shoulders, you mean turning your shoulders towards the ball.
Correct. So if I'm facing you right now, and in tennis, when you hit a volley, you turn your shoulders and move towards the ball that way.
Right.
Don't have enough time.
Yeah.
If Ryla DeHart or Jack Monroe's hitting a ball at you from essentially 9 feet away as they're reaching into the kitchen, you are not going to have enough time to turn, not be able to only see the ball out of one eye and then make clean contact with it.
Yeah.
You've got to be front up. You've got to be keeping that paddle in front.
Yeah. Being patient. I think a lot of us suffer from that patience thing. So I guess the other kind of the counter argument of that patience is, I think it's good to be patient, especially at the lower levels, because if you could be patient and consistent, then someone's just going to make a mistake. Like they're going to just dink into the net, and but once you get up to your level and beyond, people just aren't making mistakes. So there's patience, but also there's a I've heard someone saying, correct me if I've kind of this wrong, but generally statistics show that the first person to get the speed up in wins the point. To a degree. So I guess it's if you get the right speed up in and you're hitting when there is, but generally you've got this, I guess you've got this counter thing where you've got to be patient, but knowing that you're much more likely to win the point if you get the speed up in first.
I think yes and no. I think one of the comments you made there was correct. If you get the right speed up in, we have a habit of taking, and I say we collectively as, let's say, top Europeans, when we go out to the States, we get exposed because we think the ball is there to be taken on, but it's not. And that's the difference, because they are waiting for you to take a ball on that isn't quite there to take on. So you're speeding up on their terms.
Yeah.
Because if you speed up to someone that's waiting for it, it comes back twice as fast, and you're already slightly out of position because you're trying to speed something up that you shouldn't be doing. And that's the difference. And I would in the US, especially those top pros, they're not speeding up on the wrong balls.
Yeah.
And that's why that statistic probably comes out that if you get the first speed up in, they're winning the majority of the points. Yes, because they're not speeding up on the wrong ones. So I think that's really the key point there is when they are versus when they're not. I'd also argue there's a big difference between the men's and the women's as well in the way that they speed up. I was, fortunate enough to be at the US Open a couple of weeks ago, and if you were to watch the men's final and put it side by side with the women's final doubles, you'll see a lot more tennis-like, fast hands, speed up, less patience on the women's side than there is the men's. The men's were a lot more patient, a lot more dinking, a lot more long rallies, of just playing cat and mouse than the women's. So, it's skewed a little bit. You had Anna Lee playing, who is phenomenal at doing any part of the game, and she can take almost any ball on, but and win any hands battle. But it was interesting to just watch the difference in who's speeding up where and why, and the women's speeding up a little bit more frequently, and a little earlier than the men.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I guess that data's flawed anyway. In thinking about it, because you've probably won from the speed up because they popped the ball up in the first place. So or whatever. So maybe there's probably other aspects to it. But I mean, I'm really interested from you being at the level you are in the sport, like seeing going over to the US as you mentioned in the US Open. I'm really interested if there's any other stuff that you kind of picked up that you thought, yeah, this is kind of where maybe in the UK that we're a little bit behind and where we've got something to learn. Is there any other kind of tactical stuff that you feel like, yeah, this is something that we can really sort of start to develop our game further in?
There's two answers to this question, because I think there's the on-court stuff and the tactical stuff, and then I'd say pickleball in general is different to that. I would argue this, that where we rate ourselves over here in the UK and Europe, if you're a 4-0 over here, you're maybe a 3-5 in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a big skill level difference and a consistency difference in the US than here. So you might be able to hit, as a 4-0, you would be able to hit all the same shots as a 4-0 over there. You would probably come off losing comfortably because you're just not anywhere near as consistent as they are. So the argument to that is, well, are you a 4-0? Well, in the parameters and in our market, absolutely. But I think that because people are playing so much over there, and the way that the Duper ratings work, and there's so many more data points, etc., I think there's a truer reflection on what your level is based on Duper. And I think that there are, at the amateur level, there's overinflation over here in Europe in terms of what your Duper rating is. And I think at the pro level, there's a little bit of underinflation, because we're sort of capped by the players that go over to the States are the only ones that can really raise the bar. So let's play a hypothetical situation out. Let's say Louis is a 5.5 singles player, and he's the highest in Europe. That means that for every match that Louis plays in Europe, if he was to lose, he goes down massively. If he was to win, he basically stays the same.
Right, yeah.
So it will drag him down.
Mm-hmm.
And no one can really go above that too much. And that's where the challenge has been. But for anyone else underneath, and that big pool of players underneath, where there's not anywhere near the amount of matches, data points, getting points off Louis or myself or Thadia or Pei or you name it, actually pulls your Duper back up.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got people that are starting to move up Duper, when if they were to go over to the US, they're probably not that Duper. And you've got some of the top ones that are probably underneath what they would be in the US. So I think that I would love for us to pick up a big tournament here in Europe and just plug it in the States and have 50% US players and 50% European players, and see where it all nets out, because I think it would be a really interesting exercise.
Yeah.
Now, to the second part of it, and I guess it was sort of fed in, infrastructure is a big piece. It's no secret there are just not enough pickleball courts over here, and there are 1 billion in the US, and growing daily. It's more, we don't have the same climate as a lot of the states that are prominent in pickleball in the US, and real estate, for the most part, around the US is a little bit cheaper to be able to put indoor facilities, etc., and space is more available. I'm excluding San Francisco, New York, some of these, Chicago, some of these places. But there is an absolute need for indoor infrastructure over here in the UK, and I know there are plenty of groups looking at different spaces. And I think once the infrastructure starts growing, I think you'll see a massive boom in pickleball here in the UK. I would also argue that our pickleball community here in the UK is, I've got to find the right term for it, is more inclusive than that of the US, especially at the higher level. Now, whether that's because it's more professionalized in the States and people are playing for their livelihoods, money, all this sort of stuff, and it becomes a little bit cliquey, maybe that's part of the reason. But I would like to think that any of the top players in and around Europe, especially in the UK, are very approachable by anyone at any level. And I'd like to think that enough of us give time and try and give back to the communities and really want to be involved in grassroots stuff. I don't think that same mentality exists in the US. And I actually prefer, it's no surprise, I prefer this UK European attitude towards it than the US. I just feel like it's so much more inclusive. I feel like so many more people are just closer together. I'll give the example. Whenever we go away for a big tournament, we'll probably try and get an Airbnb of people together, and it can be up to like 15 people in an Airbnb. Now, in the States, you'll have your own little groups of people, and they're staying very separate, and they won't necessarily go out for dinner with one another. And we're up till, and this is probably not the most professional, but we'll be up till 1 a.m, all playing card games and having a few drinks and going out to the restaurants, and including if we're in Spain, we're including the top Spaniards. If we're in France, we want a little French with us. So I think it's just, it's a different atmosphere and a different environment around the top level of pickleball here in Europe than it is in the US. And for me, I prefer it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that likely is to do with, as soon as money becomes involved, like you say, in the livelihoods, then things change, don't they? But we can enjoy it whilst it's here and while it lasts. Hopefully, we can maintain some of that too. But yeah, I mean, what so obviously, we need the facilities. But, if we want to become a leading nation in pickleball, I think, what challenges lie ahead for the UK to stop us from may stop us from doing that. I think about places like Australia, who also are probably, in a similar position to us. I think they've got more facilities, but less players, but they're probably, after the US, it's probably Australia and the UK that are kind of second-ish kind of place at the moment. Or maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. You can tell me differently. But Australia's got an advantage in that they have space, right? And I assume that because they have space, that the cost for setting up facilities and having facilities is going to be cheaper as well. So in a way, they've got like an advantage there. I mean, for us to become a leading nation in pickleball as the sport grows, what do you think needs to happen?
It's a good question. I think there's quite a few different pieces to this. It's not simple. Number one, I think it comes down to the governance of the sport. And I think this is probably a whole separate podcast, different discussion at another point. But, at the moment, Pickleball England are trying their best to, and so far we feel like we get enough feedback that we're doing a pretty good job with trying to run and grow pickleball here in England and the wider UK by helping Pickleball Scotland, Pickleball Wales. But additional resources are needed to really help that and turbocharge it. And right now, obviously, we are in a fight with the Lawn Tennis Association for the governing body status of pickleball. Again, I won't go into too much depth on this because it's a challenging topic, but I'd be pretty upset if the LTA were to take over pickleball. A lot of people can see what they've done in paddle. Paddle, whilst it's grown, has not grown at anywhere near the rate that it has in other countries. Most of the growth has been through the private operators rather than the LTA themselves. And if I'm a tennis player and I'm a tennis member, a member of the LTA, and my governing body is tasked with growing tennis, and then they take on a different sport, I'd be a little confused as to, hey, surely you're building an organization to try and make the most out of our sport, not taking other sports. And then, the other side to that coin is if we're pickleball members, well, you're a tennis organization. Why? You should be 100% focused on your sport. So you should be 100% focused on pickleball or paddle. So I think that will play a huge part and a huge role in how pickleball grows. And, again, personally, I hope Pickleball England continues to run and be able to get the necessary resources to really scale up the pickleball operation around the UK. I also think that the other side to this is there's got to be commercial interest in building pickleball facilities and events. And you're starting to see that from the event side. And you're starting to see outside investors trying to look at a property to put court infrastructure in. It's just trying to find the right model. And there's people much smarter than me going through the numbers and figuring out, the cost of land and real estate versus price per court and all what sort of offering, food and beverage. Is it a membership model? Is it a pay and play model? And I think once you start seeing a few of these models come together from different commercial entities, I think it will help others come into the market and be able to learn off best practices of some of the other operators in the space.
Yeah. For sure. So in terms of just facilities, obviously the governing body that's how that plays out is going to have an impact. But is there anything else that you think will, what else needs to happen for us to be able to grow the sport?
A lot of it's visibility, right? That comes with infrastructure, that comes with resources, that comes with being able to build Pickleball England. It comes with, quite honestly, the resources to build out large-scale schools programs, for example, and being able to get, pickleball paddles in the hands of the younger generations, people at school. A lot of schools already have badminton courts in their sports halls, so you've already got half of the infrastructure there. So once we can start getting paddles and balls and nets into people's hands and just showing that it doesn't need to be a serious activity, it's just a bit of social exercise and a bit of fun, I think that the growth will be huge. And just having that, getting the sport in people's hands and then providing visibility for the sport will take care of most of it. Back to my story of being a little reluctant to try it at the beginning. I think there's a lot of people that are the same thing. It's a funny name, pickleball, right? It almost doesn't look like a real sport if you were to first see two people knocking up on a court, right? It's glorified bat and ball. But actually the simplicity of it is the fun part of it, right? So I have no doubt that there will be a million more people like me that will have been hesitant to try it, will try it and be like, oh, actually, this is tons of fun, and we'll take it up. And to what level they want to play at, completely up to them. And to Pickleball England, also, it doesn't matter. We just want people getting out there, creating communities, being socially active, and enjoying the sport. And I have no doubt that will grow over time, through visibility and obviously putting the right programs in place.
Yeah, yeah. Just got to get people to try it. Once people try it, they're addicted, like you say. So, pickleball addiction.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the biggest challenges we have, and we receive this feedback all the time, is there are so many clubs that started, let's say 3-4 months ago with a couple of hours on a couple of badminton courts, and now their membership or their club is completely full, and they've got waiting lists, people to try and come and play. So it happens very quickly. It's just, do we have enough places for this to happen? Do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the visibility to get people trying it? And ultimately then managing it from there.
Yeah. I even wonder if like putting it in like a shopping centre, like in shopping centres, those like pop up stands and like pop up pickleball in a shopping centre to just get people to come and give it a go.
Yeah, it's happening quite a lot in the States, these pickle malls as well. So, what we've seen is a lot of high street stores leaving, and closing down a lot of brick and mortar retail stores, shall we say.
Yeah, yeah,
And they are now being taken up by leisure or experience facilities, I like to call them. So
yeah,
your flight clubs of this world. So,
yeah,
digital darts with a big bar and all this. They are so popular. You can't get a table or anything
yeah,
in them in London. Love nor money, right? You have to book way, way, way in advance. It's happening big time in the States. I happened to walk into Sawgrass Mills when out in Miami, so big outlet shopping mall, and just walking through casually, just browsing, try and do a little bit of cheaper shopping. Turns out it's not that much cheaper.
yeah. Not anymore.
And walked around the side of this mall, and there's this new this shop selling pickleball and paddle and restringing services. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I haven't seen one of these, especially a big fit out like this. And, walk in, take a little look around, and what I see behind is they are building in the warehouse part of it where all the they're building something like 24 pickleball courts to go in there and like 8 paddle courts.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is what we need in the UK. I said, I got speaking to the manager of the place, and he said the demand is just there, and they're happening in all the malls around the US. So to your point, I think whether it's pop up little ones that are a month or a 2-month activation or whatever that looks like, through to taking up retail space and becoming this new experience, and you include food and beverage into it, and it's suddenly your high street go-to. Your Friday night, your Friday evenings are taken up by going down to restaurant, have a few drinks, and go and play some pickleball.
Yeah, becomes viable then. Okay, so onto the PPL. So first of all, congratulations on captaining the team that won the first PPL racket. As I watched, I didn't manage to go, which is really annoying. I really wanted to go, but I watched the whole stream. So yeah, very well done on that.
Thank you very much. Look, a huge amount of first props to the PPL team, and Ed Hares most specifically for envisaging this and putting it together, and everyone that's come together to be a part of that team. And again, it's individuals and groups like PPL that are going to help the growth of pickleball in the UK. They've done a phenomenal job. They've learned a lot this year. I think they're expanding massively next year, and I can only imagine that will be year on year from here on out. But it was great to be part of the first season of it. I was lucky. We drafted a young team. We're the youngest team in the league by quite some way, I think. And I just had individuals that loved playing, got on with one another really well, and most importantly, improved over the year. So, my focus throughout the league season wasn't necessarily on winning matches, but making sure we formed some good partnerships. People get their opportunities to play, to improve, to play against some of the best players in the UK. And we had some great wins, some not so great losses, and everything in between. And I think it prepared us well for the finals, which we were very fortunate to win. I say fortunate, but actually my team played extremely well. I couldn't be more proud of what they've managed to achieve over the course of the season. I am not sure if I can say, but depending on when this goes out, my vice captain Jess Wilson was phenomenal this year and will be rewarded as such. I'm sure people will find out soon. So she was phenomenal this year and really helped. Again, Maisie Wise, fantastic, played some really good matches throughout the year, just couldn't quite make it for the finals. Jamie Basford also couldn't quite make it for the finals with something going on, but played a huge role in our team and won some really important matches. And Dan Wren and Mercedes, they were excellent all weekend. If I had to give an MVP on our team, I actually don't know who I could give that one to, because every single one of them stepped up at really, really important times. Whether it was a third set in 3-2 up to make sure we didn't go into a dream breaker, to some really key points in our semi-final dream breaker. Everyone played their part, and it was just so much fun to see it come together and come out on the winning side of it.
Yeah, no, it was great to watch, and indeed, you were fifth out of six teams in the league going into that. I mean, if you're honest, did you believe that there was a chance you could win it going into the finals?
I was quietly confident, and a few people knew that, and they told me to keep my mouth shut, and it would never happen. Like I said, I saw the growth of our team. I knew what our strongest team. Well, I think I knew what our strongest team needed to be in certain matches, and then to figure out, as we progressed through the draw, whether we needed to change it up. With the absence of Maisie and Jamie, it was there was less manoeuvring that I could do. But I was quietly confident. I think they've all been playing well. They've all been training loads recently as well, which was, again, just music to my ears as a captain. Be like, right, you go do your stuff because you're practicing. I think that when you look back at the season, forget the finals for a second, I think all the teams, bar one team, and I'll give this, the Pickleball Store were the best team over the year and deserved to win the league overall. I think they performed week in, week out, won the most matches. But I think between the rest of the teams, it was all really, really even. We saw so many dream breakers throughout the season. And going into, I think, the last week or the last set of fixtures, we could have finished anywhere from third to sixth, right? And we finished fifth. And it just, depending on all the results, we still could have been anywhere. So I think the format is really smart. It keeps it super interesting. And I don't want to saying that fifth isn't a reflection on how we did. It sort of is, and it sort of isn't, because any one of those teams could have been fifth, and any one of those teams probably could have been second or third as well. So, being fifth going into it didn't worry me as a captain. I was just really excited for the rest of the team and how they were playing.
Yeah. Indeed, you played Thaddeus' team, the Pickleball Store, in a dream breaker, right? And I think I'm right in saying that they hadn't lost a dream breaker the entire season. You actually won it quite convincingly. in the finals. What do you think that was down to?
That was in the semi-finals. Yeah.
Semi-finals, yeah. Sorry, I meant the finale. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, there were there were some key points in it, and they all went our way. And this is what you work hard for, right? That little bit of luck or that little run of points here and there. And my team has put in the effort and the hard work to do that. So, yeah, there were a few runner points in there that were really, really key early. So once we got up, we just didn't look back. We were relentless after that. But yeah, definitely satisfying taking out Pickleball Store and a Dream Breaker, having with them having not lost one. So
Yeah, yeah. And also, you were named the first captain for next season, for season 2. That you and Molly at the time of recording.
Defend it somehow.
Sorry, yes. So
Yeah.
you need to defend it. Yeah. So I mean, what are you looking forward to with season 2? Obviously, it's going to be bigger and better, more divisions, more coverage. Well, everything's just going to be better from my understanding. So, what are you looking forward to?
Look, we're still early stages in the development of pickleball in the UK. And I would say my biggest takeaway from the league in general is seeing how some people have used this as a real springboard for their pickleball careers and really trained hard for it and improved immensely. There were some players that were right on the periphery as to whether they would be drafted or not last year. And they're now probably one of the first players you'd put on the team sheet, which is just amazing. So for me, with multiple hats on, as a team captain, I just want to see my team, one, get on with one another. I think that's team chemistry is going to be the most important thing that I'm looking for. And two, just seeing that overall improvement throughout the year. And, when it gets to the finals, we'll deal with winning at that point. But I want everyone to improve a load over the next series of matches and through this season.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Okay, we're coming up to the hour now, so I want to kind of see if I've got a few closing questions. But before I do, I have one question for you that I meant to ask earlier. So, you naturally, your game fits singles better, you found. But, do you prefer playing singles or doubles?
I prefer playing doubles. Yeah, I prefer playing doubles. I think it's that camaraderie of having a partner there and being able to figure things out. And I feel like I am learning personally a lot more in doubles than I am in singles at the moment. Which all of us, we still have tons to learn. And I think that every day that I'm on the doubles court, I'm learning more and more, seeing more of the court, and sort of playing out new game plans in my head. So that's a really fun thing for me at the moment that I'm just experimenting with. So I'd say doubles, but I enjoy singles because I enjoy hitting forehands past Louis and Freddie and the guys and watching them be like, oh, not another one.
Well, I remember there was a lot of that in the nationals. Actually, you played, I think, in the semi-finals, maybe Louis, and you had an epic performance that match. Really was. I think Louis was, didn't know what to do, and he was a lot of hanging his head. But you were just on fire that day, so or in that match. So it was really it was one.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my better performances. That's for sure.
So yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I prefer doubles mostly for the most part, but there is something about singles just being one person versus another person. Just me versus you and the court, and there is something quite fun about that. But overall, definitely I prefer doubles. But and I'm getting too old for singles as well. It's knackering, isn't it? So
hard work, isn't it?
It is.
To come off of a singles day in a tournament and just being like, oh, I feel broken now. It's just so much pushing off and very fast, quick, explosive movements.
Yeah. Okay, so what are your plans? Well, what are your plans for pickleball in the next 12, 24 months? What events are you planning attending, and you got any longer term sort of objectives?
Somehow, I've got to fit in a fairly busy schedule of events coming up. The summers in Europe are always pretty heavy with events. I'm out in Madrid the back end of next week for a Peak Leagues event.
Yeah.
I'll be down in Rota, Spain for an event down there at the back end of next month. There's still the Paris Open, which is looking unlikely that I'll be able to go to, but we'll still try to. I think I'll probably be in the States for work. And then we've got another Peak Leagues event in Lisbon, another Mediterranean Open in Madrid. And I've just heard that there's a Scottish Open. We've got the English Open. So the calendar's filling up pretty quickly. I'm not sure whether my body's going to like all of this. But no, there's a lot of tournaments coming up. But I would say that the one that I'm most looking forward to, and I can guess that probably quite a few of the Europeans are most looking forward to, is English Open, because once again it will be up at the Telford International Centre. We're at I checked this earlier in the week. We're at 1,475 entries right now.
Okay.
And we're still a few months away. So another huge event. Pros from the States, Next Gen from the States, India, and all the other countries. They'll be sending very, very strong teams out to it. So really looking forward to that one. And if it's, hopefully we build on last year. And I thought last year was a fantastic event in its own right. So yeah, that one's the one that I've got circled in my diary to be like, right, I need to be in tip-top shape for that one.
Oh yeah. I mean, even if it's the same as last year and it doesn't build, I mean, I can't imagine how it could be better. It was just epic last year. So
well, that's what we're tasked with trying to do. I don't know either, but I'm hoping somehow.
Already, Susanna, I've said this before, but on a podcast, Susanna Barr said it was her favourite tournament of the entire year, and that includes all of them. So even for her, it was the best one she attended. So it's already the best.
That's great to hear.
That's a quote from Susanna Barr. It's the best tournament in the world. So it's not her quote. Before I get in trouble with that, but yeah, anyway, she did say it was her favourite of the year. So
we saw her out in US Open. She did say she was going to try and be back over. She really enjoyed it. So yeah, and I think that was the same sentiment was said by a lot of the people, a lot of the US APP pros and Next Gen that came over last year. They're all like, how do we get over? When is it? And I think they're putting some pressure on the APP and Ken Herman to make sure it's realised from their end. So
yeah. That was great. And it was great watching actually the US pros on the championship court. That was one of the things that was so good, having that tiered seating and being able to watch them there live was brilliant. So when you're not playing. So fast forward sort of 12, 24 months, well, 24 months, let's call it. Where do you hope pickleball will be in the UK?
That's a really good question. I think number one thing is I just want to continue to see growth at all levels of the game. I am hoping by that point we will have plenty of facilities, and the facilities question isn't coming up in podcasts or interviews or any of this, both indoor and outdoor, because whilst we will definitely need the indoor infrastructure, there's nothing quite like in the late spring, early summer, playing outdoors until it gets dark in the evening, and having a pizza and a pint after and whatnot, and it just bring that sort of social element to it. So I hope, number one, that there'll be tons of infrastructure. People will know about the sport. There'll be people playing everywhere. I think that's, between that and Pickleball England being able to be in a spot where they can really influence and help develop all levels of the sport. That's the goal. Is there sustainable funding? Can we employ people full time to really just focus on pickleball and the growth of it and running events? Those are just sort of key areas that we really need. personally, from a playing perspective, I hope that the tournament calendar continues to grow. Not just tournaments, actually festivals and stuff. I really enjoy going to the social sides of these things as well. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see once money starts coming into more money, should I say, starts coming in from a prize money perspective, and whether there is a more robust European circuit, and how that plays out through a global lens, right? At some point, you're going to start seeing a global tour, or different styles of global tours, and ultimately be up to the players and agents and tours to decide who's on what. But hopefully there'll be a coming together of the minds to be like, right, the English Open is a star on the calendar. The Swedish Open is a star on the calendar. The French Riviera Festival is one on the calendar, and it would be nice to start seeing these sorts of things come together in Europe. But we'll see.
Yeah, no, that would be excellent. I hope that comes to fruition in 24 months' time. That'd be great. Well, James, thanks once again for taking the time. I really enjoyed talking to you. I think we covered a lot of ground. If people want to follow you and what you're doing, where's the best place for them to go?
I've got some friends that will laugh at this immediately. So I'm very, very quiet on social medias. I use it as a tool for work and all this sort of stuff. But I made a bet with a few people saying that, right, I'll start posting pickleball content and getting on social media if I reached 1,000 followers on Instagram. So people, I'll repost things that have been posted about me or collaborate with like PPL that are doing a really good job trying to promote. So I'll do a few of these things. So I said once I get to 1,000 Instagram followers that I'll start putting more content out on that and being more active. I'm at 994 as of yesterday. So I keep getting these texts. We're almost at 1,000. Where's it going to go? So when this comes out, if there are a few people that start following on Instagram, there may be some content out, and I might start to be more of a voice. Or I may have deleted a bunch of followers by that point to make sure I stay under that 1,000 threshold. We'll see. Instagram will probably be the place where a lot of things will live.
It normally works the other way around. You post stuff and then you get followers. Not you get followers and then you start posting stuff. But you're still.
There was, in my mind, there was never a scenario that was reaching 1,000, because if you don't post anything, what is the point of following me? But it seems to have crept up there, and we're getting dangerously close to me having to actually create my own posts and do all this. So,
well, it will happen now. We'll get this out and it will happen. So you're at night. You still are at 994. So we've got six to get.
Someone texted me last night saying 994. I hope you're thinking about your first post and the captions and all this sort of stuff. I almost deleted them from Instagram deliberately to make sure I went down to 993 and they couldn't see.
Excellent. All right. Well, it's Friday, recording here, Friday afternoon, 5:20. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks again for coming onto the show. It's been great.
Mark, pleasure. Keep it up. Love to hear the different interviews going around and the different personalities that you're speaking to.
Great. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Mark.